Live from my unmowed lawn, it's your business news self-help guide, Business Pants. Today on this August 29th, 2022 show, how to stop learning stuff effectively, how picking a side sometimes actually means picking a side, and finally, do as I say, featuring me. I am the empty shell of Matt Moscardi. Why? Because there's nobody else here. I work alone. Look next to me. Look right there. There's nobody. It's me and nobody. Me and nobody. So I'm going to walk you through your weekend news. We're going to do these in shorter versions. We're going to cover a couple of top stories, and then we're going to move on. We're going to save our long shows for Friday. We're going to try a bunch of things because it's fun. And, no one really cares what we say anyway. So today, the news in 3 segments. First up, stop learning stuff. And you can start with this story. Vote to defund library is the latest battle over age-appropriate content for kids. Voters in Western Michigan voted to defund their local public library, the Patmos Library, because they're upset about the presence, just the presence of, now, you didn't have to take out these books. They exist. The presence of LGBT-themed books on the shelves in children and young adult sections. It's like they don't even know the founders of Google were librarians. Like you defunded librarians. Is this just a war on Google? And plus, where will old people use Netscape to look things up? Like they want to write their 4-word email to their grandchildren. But here's what the voters managed to stop by defunding the library. The vote is going to go, they're going to have a second vote in October, but they're likely to run out of money before the end of the year. They even someone started a GoFundMe page because that's what we've come to. We GoFund a library. So this is what they managed to stop. Monday and Thursday this week from 12:30 to 1 o'clock is story time for kids. We're going to kill that. Unfortunately, they couldn't stop the wokeness earlier this summer because this summer they had Thursday night movie nights. The last movie they just played was Lilo and Stitch, which was shown to unsuspecting kids. Imagine how woke they got from that. That's a Disney joint. There's nothing woker than Disney, right? And Monday Crafternoons, props for clever names, will be shut down, as well as the monthly read. This monthly read coming up is a book called The Summer That Melted Everything, about how a town in Ohio fought the devil incarnate. I'm not joking. I didn't make this up. These are real things. That's what they defunded. Apparently, the 60 books that had any LGBT themes out of 60,000 books were enough to stop the woke. This is anti-woke news. Also, stop discriminating against Q and plus. Just stop it. You want to stop the woke, then at least make sure you include the Q and the plus because they're part of it. So don't discriminate against them. And then there was this story. Showdown over Nasdaq board diversity rule heads to the 5th Circuit. That's right. The National Legal Policy Center, some make-believe anti-woke center, brought a lawsuit against Nasdaq for their proposed diversity rule that adds women to boards. They basically set minimum thresholds for women on boards, and they propose you have to have a certain amount, phase-in period where you have a certain amount of women. We're talking about a small number of women, and also they have to self-identify as a person of color or not. Hester Pierce did a lot of hand-wringing over this because all of a sudden she thought there'd be pressure on an individual on a board to say they were something, and maybe they weren't, or they didn't want to. I don't know what she was upset about something. But I just want to point out that we have CRT, we have ESG, we have LGBT, forget Q and plus, and DEI. Remember when it was just the ESG people? Remember it was just us and sustainability and impact and ESG? I used to go to conferences. They used to complain all the time about acronym soup. There's so many acronyms. I can't keep anything. Now, the anti-woke have the same problem. It's like we're one person. It's like we're a shared unithought. So this is happening. But here's some people who could actually use some help. Maybe you could point them to a library, or we could give them an acronym, because apparently Stop Learning Stuff they're taking very seriously. This is what they're not learning. The headline is people are still moving to hot, dry places like Phoenix and Las Vegas. They don't have news, apparently, where these people are because there are record droughts. The Colorado River is running dry. If climate change had an acronym that we could boycott, maybe then we could just say we're going to show climate change who's boss, and then, we won't go to Phoenix. We could boycott the wokeness of climate change, but no, that's not what's happening. Instead, we're moving to the driest places in this country as we don't have water. Let's move on to pick a side. Pick a side. Do you sell data to Texas or not? Here's the headline. MSCI did not advise Texas comptroller on fossil fuel boycott lists. That is true. They did not advise them. I know the people at MSCI. We're MSCI clients. MSCI is great. They would never call you up and advise you on how to make a fossil fuel boycott list. It's not what they do. It's not their business model. MSCI instead sold ESG data to Texas so the state could comply with their fossil fuel enemy lists. The list, among other lists that they have, including an anti-terrorism list and an anti-Israel list, MSCI dropped the price from $100,000 a year where it was to $95,000 a year to avoid scrutiny as part of the rule, because any vendor they make $100,000 or more would apparently be subject to this law, this woke in enemies list law, and MSCI could avoid that by dropping it for $5,000. You know what's really obvious about this? MSCI didn't help Texas necessarily, not on purpose. They didn't actually give them any advice and tell them anything. They just gave them data. They sold them data. Anyone can buy the data. We got the data. Board Sabermetrics, our product, built largely off of MSCI data. But MSCI selling them the data and dropping their price proves one really clear thing. Anti-woke, anti-BlackRock, anti-ESG, anti-whatever, insert your noun here, is really just capitalism. Because what they did was get a 5% discount on a bunch of data. They labeled one political enemy for part of their political theater, and it's likely to cost them nothing. It's win-win. You see how this works? That's how capitalism works. Win-win. The people who are incumbents win. That's how it works. Pick a side. Managers or employees. Managers, here's the headline. Managers freaking out over quiet quitting shows some bosses are out of touch and have always expected their employees to work extra. So apparently now doing what you're hired to do in the time that you're supposed to do it is a revolution. Or maybe it's part of a broader labor movement against capital consolidation among owners. There was the Great Resignation. There's the Great Unionization. We're talking about Alphabet, Amazon, Starbucks, Apple, all in the news as workers are unionizing. In fact, Amazon has filed dozens of objections to the unionization in Staten Island. Howard Schultz of Starbucks has spent a good amount of time trying to find ways to screw his unionized employees, including giving pay raises to the non-unionized ones, which apparently might be illegal. And Apple and Google have seen union action for several years. Google has its own mini union as we speak. And now I think what we got is the Great Surrender. The Great Surrender is where workers realize that going to the office more and more, being more productive, actually doesn't benefit you. It benefits these people. These people, this is a tidbit from our data, these people, if you're looking at the board of directors from Apple, Google, Amazon, and Starbucks, those board members in 2022 that were not executives got an average of 95% approval from investors. Despite the fact that they're facing labor issues and unionizing amongst a myriad of other issues, discrimination issues. If you're at Amazon, people are peeing in bottles. But no, the boards get 95% approval. And why does it feel like the cards are stacked against you? Because those same board members have, on average, 4 out of 10 board members they sit with, they know. they're friends of friends with. They're within third-degree connections. That's our data. We are mapping all the boards across all the world to each other. Not only are we mapping them to each other, we're mapping them through like affiliations they have. Like if they were on the Chicago Met or, opera or something. If we can find it, we'll map it to it. And what you see is a very small group of people who investors rubber stamp every single year, who know each other, getting paid year in and year out. Why would I show up and work 12 hours a day when they have no accountability? Who you got, managers or employees? And finally, let's move on to our last segment, Because I Say So. Here's the headline. Elon Musk says the world needs more oil and gas. That's right. Elon Musk said that civilization will crumble if we don't use oil and gas in the short term. And he also said people environmentalists who oppose nuclear plants are, quote, anti-human. Now, I think he means, I could pronounce that anti-human or anti-human, like some sort of weird alien. Either way, I'm wondering which blowhard to believe here. Because in 2015, Elon Musk said, quote, he said fossil fuel is, quote, the dumbest experiment in history by far. That's what he said. That was when he couldn't sell a Tesla. They were unprofitable. They couldn't get them off the floor. No one really knew how to get them. They weren't manufactured. It weren't nothing. He wasn't the richest person in the world. He was just a guy with a dream about electric cars. When you're dreaming, apparently, about electric cars, and it behooves you, and you want to market and advertise really well, you say things like dumb shit, like, you know what the dumbest experiment in history is? Fossil fuels. That's what you say. But now that you're the richest person in the world and you just went to a closed-door Republican meeting where you complained about how much taxes you had to do, you leave California because they're too woke for you, and you move to Texas where there's less legislation and less wokeness, apparently. And you announce to everyone in the world that you're moving from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party because of, I don't know, free speech. You go out and you buy Twitter because of free speech and crackdowns and stuff like that. Now that you have a lot of stuff, now all of a sudden, anyone who opposes nuclear plants are anti-human, and civilization will crumble without some oil and gas. You see how that works? Oh, and speaking of Twitter, subpoenaing the whistleblower for Twitter to get yourself out of a deal that you did no due diligence around is really next level thinking, Elon. Next level. Speaking of next, I want to finish with this, and it's my always favorite. A statement by Commissioner Pierce. This statement was on the final amendments to the whistleblower program, but this statement could really be about anything ever. And it kind of sums up the whole anti-everything movement. Here's the statement in full. Quote, here's the opening paragraph. Quote, I did not support the proposed amendment, proposal to amend the Commission's whistleblower rules and cannot support the amendments adopted today. The Commission's whistleblower program is successful, increasingly so in recent years. Today's amendments, although themselves inconsequential and unlikely to inhibit that success, nonetheless carry harmful consequences both for the whistleblower program and for the Commission's rulemaking processes. Now, let me say that again, a piece of it. Today's amendments, although themselves inconsequential and unlikely, nonetheless carry harmful consequences both for the whistleblower program and yada, da, 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 da. Anytime you can say about your anti-movement, passing this has no effect at all. It's inconsequential, and follow it up with, it will harm us, probably irreparably, forever. That is the anti-movement, because we say so. That is all I've got. That was Business Pants. I was all by my lonesome today. But come back tomorrow, because we might actually have Damian Rollis with me again. We are Free Float Media. It is August 29th, 2022. I'll see you tomorrow. Good. Bye.